the worst location ever. Like nobody ever knew where this location was at. And they moved, when Verizon bought them, they moved this location to basically across the street from us. And it was a killer location. They had a killer building, and my whole entire sales team was like, oh my God, the world's going to end. Oh my God, they're going to eat our lunch. Oh my God, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, we're actually going to get more business. I'm like, what do you mean? I'm like, because people are going to go there and they're going to wait in line forever. They're going to get bad service. They're going to get pissed off. They're going to get in their car and they're going to drive around the corner and they're going to be like, oh, there's another Verizon store. Because the biggest thing that we got told was that people didn't know we were there. And so now they got Verizon on their brain because that's the way the brain works. If I'm thinking Verizon, all of a sudden I see the sign. I drove by this building over and over again, but now with the reticular activation system, right? Like it's now my filter. Oh, I see this Verizon store, and we get it all the time. As soon as that store opened, we grew 40% that first month. And it just kept growing as the months went on. And that was our best store we had in our company for the longest time.
I will tell you, there's a couple of things I think that maybe you're going to maybe tell me why, but I understand why they're using tablets when you go into a store because they want to see you using a tablet. Look at all the work I get done. Can we get my phone turned on before I fucking die?
Yeah.
It's like an hour and a half to go and get a cell phone.
Yep.
It's like we have to do this. They're clicking. It's like people get pissed.
I can't believe it's not gotten better. I went and got a phone around Christmas time, and I'm like, this has not gotten any better in the 7 years that I've been gone. This is insane. This is insane.
And then the old man comes walking in. Can you look at my phone bill? It's 92 cents more last month. What is going on? The reps are like, oh my God. Yo, Jason, you're up next on the list. You're like, no, I'm getting no commission on this. Like, they treat them guys terrible, if you ask me.
Yeah. Yeah. Man. And that's, again, that was how I saw in the industry so clearly. How can we beat everybody else? We take care of our customers. When old people came in, we did BlackBerry classes when the BlackBerry was out. We did smartphone classes, and it was mostly people over 50 that came in, and I'd get coffee or we'd get food, and we'd like have an hour, and like it ended up being one of our big differentiators. We'd get like 30 people every week that would come to this class, and then it was like they were building relationships, and then how are they gonna? They're never gonna go anywhere else.
Right.
They've just built this hardcore relationship with us, and they've built other relationships because we've did this thing.
Did you get any hecklers and be like, I got an iPhone? But BlackBerry was so stable.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Once you learned how to, like, the first ones were great. Then when they kind of came with the ones with the predictive text.
Yep.
Once you got used to, the only thing that sucked, most people didn't know, you just put it on the table and roll the ball to get it to work. Remember how they went?
The ball. Oh my God. Yeah.
But
yeah.
I like the track personally.
I like the track too.
I just can't put it out there how solid they were. They were tough.
So
they
solid.
Worked.
Yep.
The battery would last like 5 days.
Yeah. The BlackBerry was my favorite until Android came along, and then it was again, all the apps and the things that you can do.
Yeah, exactly. And it's but
and iPhone's the same way, but
yeah, you have so many. Yeah, I don't even know why people argue back and forth. They're like iPhone. I have an Android and I have an iPhone. I find one does stuff great, another one does it terrible. It is what it is.
There's things, so like being in the industry, I sold against the iPhone for 4 years before we were able to sell it. And so it's like having your biggest competitor come in, and it's like, I've sold against this thing forever. So I have a internal like hate for it. And then 2, Apple was like, they knew they held all the power. They knew that there was such a, like, it was like, they knew they were giving us a gift by letting us sell the iPhone. So they said, we're not going to give you very much money to sell it. And so we made like 1/4 of what we'd make on any other device. And so it was like, make sure our customers really want the iPhone, like don't just sell them.
Right. Yeah, well, you're talking shit and you're like, hang on, my wife's FaceTiming me. Don't buy an iPhone, buy Android. Like, oh, hey, hon, what is that? Nothing.
What is that?
Because you know what?
Yeah.
They changed the landscape of communication with FaceTime that came out.
Ah, huge.
It's just, like, that's one of the reasons I have it, the Apple Music and the FaceTime, now they're grandkids.
Yep. Yeah.
I hit them up all the time.
My mom just switched over to an iPhone because my brother has their daughter's 1.5, and they do. And he was like, "You can do FaceTime with us if you can. There's other ways to do video calls.
You could send a link to Android from
FaceTime." So, but my brother convinced her, and my mom hates the iPhone. She's like, I don't get it. But
yeah, but look at all the valuable things you learned for your business. Not even knowing you were learning it in this cell phone, putting it all together, doing that. And
absolutely.
That the journey is the reward. Like Steve Jobs was right. Like I sit there and look at these companies that I've been at now that I own.
Yep.
Like look at all the places. And every day's a new problem. You know that. Same with you. Every day's a new problem. It's just like,
Well, and the thing is, you might be able to relate to this. You look at early in my career, as I'm working in a cell phone location or I'm working cell phone jobs, I was constantly looking for big boy sales jobs because I'm like, and I went through different jobs, I had different advertising jobs and that kind of thing. But I kept going back to cellular, and I had a lot of success in that industry. But it's like looking at like, oh, I'm just a cell phone sales guy, or I'm just what am I going to do with this in my career? And like in retrospect, wow. But like what it turned into, it gave me my first opportunity to lead people. It gave me an opportunity to lead a company and pull it out of bankruptcy and get all the experiences that came along with that. Like for our industry, we had to meet with the Verizon corporate leadership every quarter, and we had to give them our business plan. And in every other agent of Verizon, the owner of the company went to that every quarter and sat down with the corporate leadership and gave them their plan. But the owner of my company, she was like, this is your business. She was like, I'm going to go restructure the debt. She's like, you have full autonomy to do whatever you need to do. We work together on stuff. I'd come in and I just would give her downloads on what I was doing. But when it came down to doing those reports, she was like, you're doing this. She's like, if I go in there, I'm going to have to make up shit. I'm going to have to make up what I'm doing. She's like, that's what everybody else is doing. They're scrambling around. They're trying to create their game plan to tell Verizon, to appease them, to tell them like, this is what we're going to do. She was like, but you're doing it.
numbers speak.
Numbers speak. And it's not just the numbers, but you've changed the culture. You've created these processes. You're developing our people. When Verizon comes and says, this is our new thing that we want to sell, you get our team on board, you hit the numbers. And so we kept getting awards, and the Verizon corporate leadership loved me because I told it like it is. But I came in and was like, this is what we're doing. This is where and because of that, they kept rewarding us. They gave us cash incentives. They gave us things that they weren't giving other agents. They gave us opportunities to grow. When we got our cash flow down, we were able to expand across the state of Michigan. I was able to buy 2 locations. We were able to buy 2 locations that Frankenmuth. Like this guy was, and we talk about struggling leadership, right? Or struggling ownership. This guy, nice guy, but he didn't look nice to me, but looked at his people as dime a dozen, just wanted to own a business, but didn't necessarily want to do the things that it took to build a successful business. And so he had 2 locations. He had one in Ortonville, which is this little tiny place, and then one in Frankenmuth. And I had circled Frankenmuth on the map for a long time. I told the owner of our company, I'm like, I want that location. Like, can you imagine having a retail location in Frankenmuth? We're going to crush it. He's constantly struggling. I don't even know how. Like when we get this location, it's going to be the number 1 location in the state, which it ended up being. And so this guy, he's taken me out to his locations because we bought all of his company and his people that were inside of it. Like we inherited everything. So he's taken me out to his locations and he's given me a download on his people. And he's telling, and I don't, I'm listening to him, but I'm never going to listen to advice of somebody like that.
Just sold me a shit that's broken.
Right. All of this stuff's broken. And I know him pretty well. I know why it's broken. I know that's why I'm so confident in what we're going to do with it when he walks out the door. Right. And so he starts telling me about this girl, Hannah, that works in his Frankenmuth store. And he's like, Hannah, you're going to fire her within the first couple of weeks. Hannah won't do anything unless you pay her to do it. I'll ask her to take a bank deposit back and she'll be like, how much are you going to pay me to do it? And blah, 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 blah. And then he starts telling me about this other guy. And I can't even honestly remember his name right now. I can see his face, but I can't remember his name. Nice kid. But he's like, he's going to be your next manager. He's respectful. He does all these things. If I ask him to jump, he'll say how high, blah, 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 blah. A nice kid, but he was just an ass kisser. He had no talent and no will to be there.
Right.
When I go in, I wanted to know who are these people. And so I sat down with every person I was inheriting and I got to know them. In Hannah, I sat down with her and I found out she had a beast inside. Like Hannah grew up with some shitty parents. Like her dad was never in the picture. Her mom, like she had that year as a commission salesperson, she had made $36,000 that year. And she was like, I doubled the amount of money my mom's made in any year in her entire life. Wow. And she was so proud of it. And I'm like, I've got a beast right here.
Right.
I've got somebody that people are overlooking and she just wants a way. She wants a way to be successful. And she ended up becoming my top salesperson. She ended up becoming she ended up becoming the leader of that location. She became a manager, and then she became my first 2-store leader. So when it was time to do 2 stores, I promoted her, and she had 2 stores that she was running. And then when I started my business, I had a client that needed a salesperson, and I hired her to go work for that.
So did that cell phone business go out?
No, the owner of my company ended up selling it to, like she was able to retire, sail off in the sunset, which is awesome. It worked out for her. She was able to go up to the UP, take care of her dad, and do stuff. They sold to a guy out in like Kentucky or something, and they have like 50 locations nationwide now.
Did they give you a freaking here you go?
They did,
That's
which was
awesome.
the best part because that's why I think I started telling the story was I had told the owner of the company what I wanted to do. Like I wanted to start my own business, and it was like it's so funny because like I was given all the empowerment to do whatever I wanted to do. I could show up whenever I wanted. I hired all the people. I was, doing the things that I love to do. But when we got so big, there were so many things. I was spending 70% of my time doing stuff that I didn't like doing. There's 70% of my time that was like, I hate this. And then on top of it, I'm not enjoying Verizon anymore. I'm seeing all these people struggle. I want to go help other businesses. I don't want to be tied to one certain business. I love all these different types of, there's so many cool businesses out there
right.
that I didn't even know about. I want to learn about that, and so, I remember it was New Year's Eve, 2018, and me and my wife were sitting and talking about what this next year is going to look like. And I'm like, I don't know what this next year is going to look like because honestly, if I'm still with this company, then I've settled. But I don't know, how do I just jump from a 6-figure income when my biggest why in my life, I grew up with a single mom. My dad was abusive, asshole, ended up committing suicide at 42. And so for me, my big why was like, I want to give my family the nice house and vacations and have, nice cars, not, nothing like we're talking about, like living beyond our means, but living the life, like not living paycheck to paycheck and all that kind of stuff. And I had found a way to do that with this job. But what if I leave this job and check's not guaranteed to our point? I start a business and now I don't even know what I'm doing and how much do I charge? And I've got to go market myself and build up my name. And I don't want to be in the cell phone industry at all. I don't want to get stuck there at all.
You could have really, it just goes to show you kind of had big balls because you could literally, at that point, you could have started a consultation business for cell phones. But I'm sure you had a non-compete or something.
No, I could have went and did that. Two things. One, I was really fed up with the industry. And the second thing was I saw other people like me that thought they had what it took to go out and build a consulting company. And they went out and consulted other cell phone companies. And what they ended up with was another job. They ended up getting hired by that because that was the only client they went out and got. That client ended up paying them good money. They did good work. The client was like, we'll give you more money if you just become part of us and you become an employee. And they're like, oh, I don't have any other clients. What do I do? And the next thing you know, they got a new job. And I'm like, I do not want that to be me. I do not want to get stuck in that. Who's to say if I'm struggling in my business and all of a sudden they say, hey, you want $100,000? And I'm like, give me the food, No,
you're right. You're definitely right there.
I love it. I remember the story. Have you heard the story about Sylvester Stallone and Rocky?
Yeah.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
Right. And they're asking him like, why didn't you go get a job? He's like, because I didn't want the way out. I didn't want to get in that job. And all of a sudden now I've got bills and I've got this life that I've got to live and I can never go do that thing that I wanted to do now. I'll now have regrets for the rest of my life. And that was where I was at. I didn't want to go do that.
Makes sense. So tell us exactly what your company does now, because we've really never, obviously you do stuff for me, but let's talk about what you do. We got half an hour.
Yeah. Oh, super awesome. So I work with difference-making entrepreneurs and help them uncage their authentic voice so they can make the impact in the world that they want to make. It's really awesome. I call it empowering the empowerers, the people that I say difference makers, but the people like you, like I remember our first conversation, you're like, there's along the lines of there's a lot of stuff that we're talking about. They're like, there's so many business owners out there that are doing it the wrong way and they're going to go out of business. Right. And
they just don't know.
And it's like, you want to create a platform in order to educate those people. I have a client that I've been working with for 4 years. And when she started, she was a $16 an hour she was $16 an hour working for a nonprofit. She was a sobriety coach, and I met her on LinkedIn and I had her on my podcast, and she told me this incredible story about her life, and her brother is a pro football player and something that doesn't really have anything to do with her story. And I just saw like, if you stop playing small in thinking that the $16 an hour job is like where it's at and like that's going to be your thing, and you start your own thing, you're going to be a household name. And we had several conversations like that. We started working together, and she started her own company, which is really funny. She started her own company. We're working together. She's still doing the job. And what I learned over time working with her those first couple months is that job recognized what I recognized. They had her building out all their programs, putting her name on it. They were attracting clients because they had Sparkle Lindsay, and everybody wanted to work with Sparkle Lindsay. And so I'm like, they need you more than you need them. But
Right.
she thought that she needed them more than they needed her. And so once we flipped that, she was on the verge of leaving and just going full time with her business, because she had started to replace her income with her for her job with her clients that she took on individually. But she was like, but if I leave, they're not going to have anybody, and I'm going to leave them in a lurch. So she's like, what if I decide to consult them? And she spent the whole session planning out this whole, like, how am I going to position that they can pay me, and I'll consult them and I'll still do the work that I'm doing for now. And so she goes in to talk to them, and I get a call from her a couple hours later, and she was like, you wouldn't believe this. She's like, I went up to him, and she's like, I said, hey, I need to talk to you guys today. And they're like, oh, great. We need to talk to you too. Let's come on in the office and have a conversation. She's like, great. She's like, you guys go first. They're like, awesome. They're like, we noticed that you've been spending a lot of time on your business. And she's like, yep. And they're like, yeah, you need to really understand who feeds you. And so we're going to write you up.
Oh.
She's like, I quit. Just like, I quit right there. I told them I'm leaving. I'm going to pursue my business because I did realize what feeds me. And what's awesome is she's no longer one-on-one coaching. She is now trained, coached, mentored, and certified 650 sobriety coaches across the country. She's become a household name in her industry, and it's just helping her get out of her head to play big, to play big, to realize what her full potential was. What I see is, like, when people tell me their stories, I can see that in like a strategy. I see, like, stories are data with soul. When I say that, going back to the cell phone industry, and I'm working with entry level employees and getting them to perform outside of what they ever thought was capable, by telling them a story of, if this happens and it works, where could you be?
Right, the $1 million mindset.
The $1 million mindset.
There's books about this.
Story is so important for both internal and external. If I'm going out as a salesperson and I'm saying all the marketing message that my company told me to say, and I'm making the calls, I'm doing all the things they told me to do, but I don't believe the story, it's not going to work.
You have to be, 100%. I could not agree more.
The first client you have to sell, the first biggest client, is you.
Yep.
You have to believe in it.
Believe in what you're selling.
You have to believe in it. And part of that is understanding what you're selling, and knowing the ins and outs. But you have to believe that what you're doing is really going to help that person.
I don't know where I heard this or read this, but this is something that I found very interesting. It's as simple as ordering at a restaurant. You ever notice some people say, I'll have the cheeseburger and fries? There's other people say, can I have the cheeseburger and fries?
Yep.
Did you ever notice that?
Absolutely.
Now you start watching it, you're like, okay.
Yep.
And when I said it, I didn't say nothing to anybody. I watched it. We went to dinner. Lincoln said the same thing. I didn't give me that. My wife's like, can I please have?
Yep. Have you ever went to the grocery store? And not to pick on females in general, but it's mostly a female trait. You walk down the aisle and like you have about this much separation, and they shrink down and say, excuse me.
Yeah.
It's the story they have in their head. They don't even realize that they're doing it.
No,
but it's playing small.
I always tell my wife, stop apologizing. We're in this climate now. Everybody's apologizing to everybody.
For what? What am I apologizing for?
Why am I apologizing? Oh, I'm sorry. What? For what?
For what? What'd I do?
Yeah. I don't want to say I'm the guy that goes out in the parking lot after leaving church and the guy cuts me off on where they're flipping him off, but
There's a time for apologizing. It's not on every incident. It's not because you walked on the same aisle as somebody or you took up the same space as somebody, and my big core belief is that hell is meeting the person that you could have been. What's holding you back? And so that's how I work with my clients a lot, is like figuring out, from the coaching standpoint, what is that point, what's holding you back? And one, internally, let's build that confidence by creating that narrative inside. You understand what you're doing. And then now let's get it out to the people that are going to be your followers and that care.
What is the biggest mental block you see across most people that, they're good at building a business. They get to the point where they're like, okay, I need Jason Tracy. And you look at them and say, okay, what is holding you back? What do you find? Because they don't know a lot of times. A lot of times it could be a bad childhood. It could be their dad calling them a certain name. They're like,
Yep.
What do you find most?
All of that. People don't realize the power in their story. I'm not, even before I knew, because this is like a lot of repositioning in my company. It's even sitting on this podcast, people are coming up to me and like, oh my God, you have this superpower. You're doing this thing. And it's like really figuring out what am I doing, But I sit down with people and there's so many people that are like, I see them as this incredible entrepreneur that's making things happen. And I'm like, oh, I want to have you on the podcast. And they're like, me? I don't have a good story. Like, oh, me? Like I did this retreat in June, entrepreneur retreat, and in the afternoon session, we created content. I told everybody, I'm going to sit down with you for 7 to 9 minutes and I'm going to do an interview. We're going to do a conversation. We're going to create some content out of it. And the person turned to me and was like, what if I don't have a story? And then we did I'm like, because you said that, you're going to be the first one. And I set her down in the chair and my wife was doing the filming while I was doing the interviewing. And she made my wife cry with her story. And it's like people, we always get, my biggest pet peeve is like the taking of being humble, that we can't admit that we're good at stuff or that we can't admit that we have a cool freaking story or, like, we can't brag on ourselves because we got to be humble and, and stuff like that. But man, to a sacrifice of that, we do a lot of self-deprecating.
You're 100% right, because when I did my first podcast with my mom and dad and you listen to my story, I was a fucking disaster.
Yeah.
You look at that and I was sad after I watched my first thing. I thought, fuck. But you know what I did? I kept going.
Yes.
And every opportunity I seen, I took. And like Henry Ford says, your opportunity might become dressed in overalls.
Yes.
His was.
Henry Ford also said if I would have done what my clients wanted me to do, I would have found a way to build a faster horse.
Right.
They didn't know what was possible. They didn't know what was possible. And he saw the vision. They didn't.
Yeah, and I just kept going. And I've always been a guy that's like, that was one difference between me and Steve Garrett. I would always say, you know what? I'll take the chance. If I fail at it, we could always restart it. It's not like we're going to lose $10 million and go bankrupt and not be able to eat. Let's just try this. If it doesn't work, we're going to go in different. And I've done that. Like right now I'm doing it. I told you before. The collision business is not a business I want to be in. It's hard. The insurance companies rip the customers off. They rip everybody off. The shops, the customers. So you know what? I'm just going to pivot and I'm going to open a trailer parts store. Yeah. I'll do the collision work as it comes. The profitable collision work, I'm not doing it for the insurance companies who want me to make 9% on a job that's a $12,000 job. It's going to take me 3 weeks, okay?
Yep. But
I'll fix Jason Tracy's snowmobile trailer, ATV trailer with a good profit, give the guy a good service and have the part, you know what I mean? And not have to work. I'm not going to be beholden to the insurance company.
I think this is a really good question thinking about that. How do you sever the emotions of the business, or do you get those emotions in the first place? There's some people that don't pivot because they're so emotionally locked into their idea or their business. They start this business and they're like, I can't close down because, or pivot and change because.
For me, obviously there's families connected to my businesses, right, that work for me. The emotion, right now I'm screaming inside my head. There's a little guy in a cage going, oh my fucking God, it could fail tomorrow. Like, I do have to deal with that all the time. Nobody likes to fail.
Yep.
Especially somebody that came from where I came from.
Yep.
Okay, I failed at everything in my life.
Yep.
So I've just decided I'm not failing. So when I started to see the numbers go like this, right, and we're struggling, I'm like, what do I need to do? And you want to know the funny thing is? This is an idea I started about 5 years ago. I already have a website. I already have Google pages already in place. This whole thing is already in place. Only thing I don't have is the store. This is already, I knew I was doing it.
Yeah.
I just knew it. My wife's like, you have all that already done? I'm like, yeah, I just knew I was doing it. I just didn't know when. And now come to find out, at Motor City, it's a pretty big place. I have 3.5 acres in a pretty big building. I have a dairy company that rents half the other yard. Well, they rent it, but they said yesterday they were not re-signing their lease. They're going to move out in September. And I'm like, good. Because now I can grow, put the trailer part in there. Now I don't have, you know what I mean? Because there's stresses that come with them. So I do worry about it. But once I lock onto an idea, I'm like, it's not going to fail. I'll go whatever I have to do. Like, for instance, we were slow a couple weeks ago. I called one of my customers up that I knew he had a truck It's a furniture company that did not match all his other trucks. So he bought it. The truck's yellow, and the rest of his trucks are blue.
Yeah.
I called him up and said, yo, you know that yellow truck? He's like, yeah. I go, how about I give you a freaking banging ass deal? I'll paint it blue. I said, because you look terrible driving that thing. He started laughing. He said, all right, deal.
Yeah.
And I gave him like a $6,000 discount. Guess what? The guys had something to do.
Yep.
Okay, so I go home. I am the poster child of let's go home. Let's go out and kill it and drag it home. Garrett Auto and Truck. We have jobs there that some of the Motor City jobs can do. Motor City needs money. They need help. I have 2 people out there. Let's figure out what we need to do. So what we started doing is all the roll-up door, the liftgate work, and some of the other stamp fabrication stuff that Garrett's is not necessarily fast at. I ship it out to Motor City to do it.
Yep.
So you just got to keep in business. It can't be the status quo. I believe that some people just sit there and say, this is all I'm going to do, and if it doesn't work, I'm just going to keep going until it kills me financially. Your guy with the mesh.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have something really good working here. I'm going to go work on something that's a piece of shit.
Well, and I love this because as you're talking about that, it ties home into that other thing of like you asked me what's the biggest hurdle of like what holds people back is they don't realize. Listen to that first episode, with your parents. I love listening to that because like as you sit and you think about all the things that the teachers would try to drug you and take away your superpower, right? They're like you're running around driving people crazy because your mind is moving at 100 miles a minute, maybe 1,000 miles a minute. And you're running around, but that's your superpower. That's what makes you a killer entrepreneur because you constantly are thinking and you're running faster than everybody else, and people don't recognize that those things that most often people were telling us, like, you got to be a good girl, you got to be a good boy, you got to dress, you got to do those things that people were like constantly telling us that we can't be different. Like those are the things that make us stand out.
I would agree, and different is better. I mean, my move, it's no secret my mind moves so fast. Like, when I'm trying to talk to my guys, sometimes I get to the point where I'm 15 steps ahead. I have to literally, they're like, Jim's always like, you're so far ahead of me, you're going to have to, like, back up, like, 15 sentences ago, because your mind's already, but, that just kind of comes from, like, I feel like, and I would pay, this happens with a lot of your clients, they have something to prove. They had something happen in their life or somebody told them they weren't worth it.
Yep.
And it's a funny story. I was in Peacemakers yesterday, and I was cleaning out some stuff, and I found an old German Luger that I had loaned a guy money for, and he never came back and got it. So I'm like, well, I'll take this up and sell it. And I was talking to the guy, and the guy that I've known for 35 years used to be the parts manager years ago down at Sellers Buick GMC.
Yeah.
Well, he'd known me when I was broke as fuck. And the guy said, oh, that's a nice watch you're wearing. I was wearing this watch. It's a Rolex, right?
Yeah.
He's like, man, to have a watch like that. And I said, you would not believe what I had to do to get a watch like this, or watches. I have watches, right? That's one of my passions. I like them, their investment, whatever. And Joe came over. He's like, I know what this guy had to do. And that kind of felt good to me.
Awesome,
because,
That's so
people
awesome.
see you walk in and you're got the watch on or whatever. I try not to be arrogant.
Assumptions, yeah.
But they're like, look at this rich fuck.
Yep.
He pulled up in his Corvette. He's got a roll.
Must be nice.
Must be nice.
Yep.
But it
could have been you too.
It could have been you, but you weren't sitting there doing the things I had to do. And trust me, like the guys who started with me at the very beginning, they know.
Yep.
But you can't always go out and tell people, yeah, I had to do this. I had to walk, to school, update, whole hell ball. You can't, so that kind of goes to what you said. It's like, you don't really want to go around apologizing for doing good.
Yeah.
But you have that thing in your mind where you're just like, when you were younger, people were like, yeah, he's a fuck up. He's a retard. He's what, right?
Yep, absolutely.
That's kind of what I went through. So that kind of drives me. It's like, I'm not failing.
It's and so like even being very clear, like not everybody's my client. It's probably actually like 10% of entrepreneurs that are like 10% like that, the driven person. And when I say driven, it's because we're the way we are because of the trauma that we had in our life. It usually creates that like feeling. There's a book actually. It's called Driven by I can't think of the author right now, but it's called
It's an orange covered book.
It's blue.
I
think it's blue.
A book.
Maybe it is orange. Yeah. But anyways, he talks about like the mutation of your D2, D4 gene, and like what it does is like you feel like you're never enough. And so it's that constant driving, or for me, like a big driver was proving people wrong. Like the people that were saying I was never going to be shit. It's like, watch this, motherfucker. Like watch this. This is, we're going to do it.
Yeah. And it's, I feel it's, I want to say it feel hard for people because a lot of times it works out best for them because it drives them harder.
Absolutely.
I don't know how some people, I say this as a joke all the time, like how the fuck do some people make it to work? They are so unplugged from everything. It's like, here's an analogy. The guy in the left lane on 23 between 7:30 and 8 o'clock going 70 mile an hour in the hammer lane has traffic backed up. And you see him looking in his mirror like, what is all these people's problem? Like you never took into consideration that you're an asshole. Yeah. You should be in the other lane. Or the other one is nobody knows what a zipper merge is anymore.
Oh my God, a zipper
merge. They flip you
yeah.
off and stuff like that that you didn't move over for them. They have no clue how it's supposed to work.
This is my wife's biggest pet peeve while driving. It's like, zipper. Yeah. I hear her like yelling from the passenger.
But them are the people in business that don't really know what they're doing. They don't really know that it's not that hard to treat your people good.
Yeah.
A lot of people, and this is mine, and I want to hear your take on this. A lot of times when people don't pay their people well, that's because they're not running their business well and they don't have the money to treat them well.
Yep.
Or they're a dickhead, one or the other. But I think more people don't really know how to run their company. The guy that I started for didn't know how to run his company. They just didn't know. And they owed everybody money and they just can't figure out why, and you said, if you can't change your people, change your people. When I took over the shop, after we went to Management Success, we turned over our whole crew.
Yeah.
We put them off.
Yeah.
We took them off of hourly and put them on flat rate. And guys that are on commission, we're on commission. If we do a good job, we can keep our houses. Our businesses stay intact, right?
Yep.
We changed our whole group, and that was a scary time. But what you realize is it was for the better.
Yep. Those people that left were all for the better. And it gave me time to replace them. One, I knew that they weren't long term.
You know.
They
call it silent quitting. You've seen them people.
Yeah, they were dead before I got there. Like I'm just trying to help prop them up like Bernie and or Biden or whoever. Like we're propping them up and hopefully they make it until I find a replacement.
I told you about the guy that worked for us for 30 years. He silent quit me. He was silent quitting me for 2 years. And you know what? I had respect for that guy, even though he had no respect for me, that I kept him on and put up with his shit for 2 years because I figured, you know what? I owed that to him.
Yeah.
Looking back, I should have fired that motherfucker when first time he started mouthing, I'll get out of here. But you know what? I was respectful. I thought to myself, that guy put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into this place.
Yep.
So I'm going to treat him with respect. Even though after all that, I got zero. He walked out on me. He basically said, hey, I'm done. It was 2 o'clock, and by 3 o'clock, there wasn't a sign he was ever there.
That's insane.
Never even gave me any notice or anything. Now, how many people do you know nowadays that are allowed to work a 2-week notice out? I have a different take than I used to. I don't let people work the 2-week notice anymore because what you do is you spend the next 2 weeks when they're gone unfucking up everything they fucked up.
Oh, absolutely.
Is that true?
That's absolutely. I would never take a 2-week notice because of that very thing. They're checked out. They were checked out before they gave me the 2-week notice, and unfortunately, I've had to deal with whatever it was that in that time. But when they're given the 2-week notice, like it's not even fair for them to stay because, and if you have a new job and you're excited about it, like you're not going to think about this.
You're unplugged.
It'd be like giving your girlfriend a 2-week notice that you're going to move on to a new relationship. Like you're thinking about the next girl. Like you're going over to her house. You're thinking,
And it's just how the world changed, right?
Yeah.
Because when we were coming up, there was a respectful thing to do to give a 2-week notice, right?
Yeah.
In my world, I don't want them anymore because more times than not, I've got nothing but shit for 2 weeks. I'm like, oh, now we have to fix this.
Every single time. I haven't had a 2-week notice where it's like, that was pleasant. That was good.
They start showing up late. Their attitude change. They do shitty work.
Change. It's crazy how the psychology works. They might even be good people, but all of a sudden because they're coming in and giving that 2 weeks, and because they're thinking about their new job, all of a sudden in their mind they feel like you owe them because they're doing the right thing. Like all of a sudden now, like they're like getting resentful, and they're like, it's just crazy how psychology works.
It is. The last thing we'll touch on is in the last 4 months, I've had 3 people start and quit at Motor City. These people are making anywhere from between $20 and $30 an hour. They're skilled, kinda. Every one of them had one thing in common. They wanted to give advice, but their life was an absolute disaster. The first guy, we'll call him Jethro, wanted to tell everybody that they need to invest in crypto and said, hey, you guys need any investing advice, let me know. This guy had just been freshly out of a bankruptcy. They're looking to repo his truck. He would park in a different spot every day. He lived with his 92-year-old grandma.
And he's
No
trying to
money.
give people crypto.
He's trying to give the guys advice on finances and stuff.
That's going really well.
The second guy, I have never seen a guy that was just there. Didn't really have anything to say.
Yeah.
Wanted to give advice. Once again, flat ass broke. The last guy lived in his mom and dad's basement, had 4 kids that didn't talk to him, 3 or 4 kids that didn't talk to him. Wanted to give financial advice.
Yeah.
Yet he's sitting at lunch going, man, I ordered a socket from the Mac guy. I need to maybe put $32 here so I don't spend it before he gets here next week out of my paycheck. Would that be okay? And he wants to give us... There were some people with some confidence, apparently.
Confidence, man. It's
What is wrong with people? And they all quit when they basically got bitched at.
yeah.
And Jim is nothing like me. If I'm talking to you, I told the guy, I'd call him in the office. I said, if I'm talking, he's like, well, you never tell me I'm doing a good job. I go, every Friday. He goes, what? I go, every Friday when your paycheck shows up in the bank. I said, if you think I'm going to walk out there and go, ooh, you did a good job, you're wrong. I walk in, I have a job that I have to do.
Yeah.
I walk around, hey, how you doing? I said, if I don't talk to you, that's a good thing.
Yep. Yeah.
And then I leave. I'm not going to come in and tell you how great you're doing every day. Well, he was the last guy. He ended up quitting. You know, it's like these people have. He has to pay. He has to go to the laundromat because his stepmom won't let him use the washing machine. He's like 50 years old.
Man.
And you want to give people advice. I guess my point is I'm looking at you go, do you hear shit like this? Or am I the only one?
Are you hearing this out loud? Like, and that's the thing is sometimes people need to like be recorded and then to sit in a room like this and be locked in and have to watch that TV with the headphones on, you know, and like listen to it for hours.
Do you hear employee stories like this?
All the time, and again, even I talk about like stories a lot. And I didn't really realize what I was doing interviewing. I'm interviewing salespeople, and mind you, salespeople are the most dysfunctional people on the earth, in the sense of like we're all damaged.
Yeah, hit pause for him.
Yeah.
My dad literally told me. My dad was a safety guy, traveled a lot for a company. And he said you would go to the lounge in the morning, like the AMX lounge. All the salesmen had big red noses. They look like Rudolph. They're all drinking already in the morning. But go ahead.
One of the first tricks I played on, it was April Fools, and and we had this company meeting, and it was like I had this new team and stuff, and I was like, "Hey guys, we're on board of this new HR company, and they came in, they forgot to do the drug test, and so we're gonna split up. The women are gonna go to this bathroom, and then the men are gonna go to this bathroom and just wait in line." And then I just stopped, and like. You could see the panic in people's faces. It's like, oh shit! Like I know you're in sales. I'm not going to like lose my workforce, right? But like you know, really dysfunctional people. I've got to pick the best ones, the people that actually care. And so like, and I'm not saying I haven't been wrong and hired my bit of duds, but when you sit and talk to people, I just love sitting down and asking questions and hearing their story because they can't. It's hard for them to lie in their story. When they're like telling their story and it's everybody else's fault, you know, they're going through their jobs and then this happened and it was somebody they're going to do the same exact thing in this company. It's somebody else's fault, you know, like you hear the stories of I live in my parents' basement and like stuff like that. It's like, you know, there's just different things and you hear the tendencies, the patterns and the way that people speak. And it's like, I can kind of predict like I see this is the life that they live. This is the results that they give.
It's so frustrating just to hear it and see it. And you're just like, oh my goodness. It's just, you're right. You listen to these people and you're just like, what world do you even live in?
Yeah.
You know, you can hardly even make it to work. You have no money and because you don't go to work or, you know, you tell me how broke you are, but then in the next sentence, you're freaking quitting your job.
One of the things that I hated, and I would constantly like give myself pep talks. I always thought I was such a bad leader because the people that were the non-performers, the victims, I am so unattracted by it. The victim mentality disgusts me, and if you want to sit and point the fingers and say it's everybody else's fault, like go ahead, sit in that boat and watch it drown, because that's what's going to happen. And I have no time to sit here in that boat with you. I'm not drowning with you, and it's just, it's infuriating. So like my whole eat faces thing. Have I ever told you that story?
No.
Okay. So we had all the success we had in this company. We ended up winning franchisee of the year it was 2015 or 16 or something like that. And I'd always bring my leadership team with me to the industry, the franchise conventions, because like it'd get them out of the box. They'd get to go, I'd put them in front of the top owners in the country, and or the top salespeople that I've met over the years. And
winners hang with winners.
Winners hang with winners. I would point out the people that don't spend any time with those people, because they're just going to take you backwards. You're going to hear the way things should be and all that kind of stuff. But like, I always wanted to give them that experience, because when you're working retail, you don't always see the big game. For me, that's what changed my life. Was my mentor took me to Vegas and these big conventions, CTIA and stuff like that. And I got to see that we were a big player in the industry, even though I thought we were small, that people coveted the leadership and the mentality that we had and the results that we had. And so it was like, when I go, I want to bring my people so they can get that experience and they can grow and expand. And so anyways, that long story short, we end up winning franchise of the year, and I have my whole leadership team with me, and we're out in Chicago and we're out celebrating, and like all the big, with the franchisee president and all these, people are with us, and all these different successful owners are with us. And somehow this guy named Eric got invited. I have no idea how Eric was tagging along with us. And he got attached to me. He owned a couple cell phone stores out in New England area, and he starts telling me all the reasons why he's not us, why his companies are not making the money and he's not successful. And it was no looking in the mirror and saying it's my fault or there's something that I'm doing. It was, the franchise. They told me, join the franchise. We're going to make you a successful business owner. It's going to be so easy. We're going to do these things. We're going to help you, and you're going to crush it. And then he was like, Verizon, they only care about you if you're hitting numbers. They don't really, they don't care if you're struggling. They don't give you resources. They don't help you. He's like, my people just steal from me. It's like one thing after another. And like I said, that victim mentality it pisses me off. I don't want any part of it. But I felt like it was Coyote Ugly, right? This guy's like on top of me, and I got to chew my arm off to get out of it. And so we're in this loud bar, and I was drinking. So of course I was like, I was done with this guy, right? And so I'm like, Eric, man, I totally get what you're saying. Like when I started this company and Debbie joined the franchise, like Debbie was blown smoke up her ass. They were like, we're going to make you successful. We're going to do all these things. And Debbie bought it. Like Debbie was like, we may not even to do anything. I remember our conversations, like they're going to help us and they're going to do these things. And I'm like, I'm not going to sit and wait for that. Like, because I said, Eric, if I sat and I waited for the cavalry to come, I waited for somebody to say, I want Jason Tracy to be successful. Like I care about Jason Tracy specifically. I'm going to do what it takes for him to be successful. I'd still be sitting here waiting like you are. And you're right. Verizon, they only care about you if you're hitting their numbers and targets. But guess what? They don't make it rocket science. They tell you exactly what they want you to do, and they're very redundant about it, and they give you the marketing materials, and they give you the trainings if you need them. They give you all the stuff. And so guess what? I go and I crush those numbers. And not only do they give me all the trainings and the support, they've certified my people to train your people, and now you pay me for my people to train your people.
Right.
They also give me cash incentives that you don't even know exist. And so I'm over here, I'm paying myself and my people and keeping our company and paying the debt and doing all these things, and you don't even know it's an opportunity. So you're sitting here worried about everybody else, and you're not taking accountability to yourself. At the end of the day, Eric, I'm like, I'm a fucking face-eating lion. When it comes down to me eating or my people eating, I'm going to fucking eat, baby. We're going to eat. And that probably would have died. But it was like, we're in this loud bar in Chicago, and you never know those moments where you're at the top of your lungs and all of a sudden the music turns off. It was like the music turned off completely, and I'm like, I'm a fucking face-eating lion, and my people were there, and they're like, yeah, we eat fucking faces, blah, blah, blah. And like everybody ended up being the rallying cry for the next year. We ended up having a better year that year than the year before. Like everybody was like, eat faces. And then when I started my business, the leaders of like the people I'd mentored, they'd called me and was like, hey, can we get together? And we have some things for you. And so we met at Lou and Carl's over here. And they gave me this really cool book, and it had all these pictures of these experiences that we had together, and like these times I took him to these conventions. I always took him to seminars and did this stuff. And he gave me this book. In the beginning of the book, it has this big long paragraph of what I meant to them and what what the impact I had on their life. And they said at the beginning, we were frustrated retail salespeople that didn't know what we were going to do with our lives. And now we're fucking face-eating lions.
That's awesome.
And, like I'm an emotional guy, so I'm crying. But I ended up telling that story to a client one time, and he was like, eat fucking faces. Yeah, let's go. And so I'm like, you know what? People love that story. I'm going to keep on telling it. And now I'll get people that call me up. Like, I've never been clients. They just like literally listen to the podcast, or they've seen my content, or they know me. They'll be like, man, I was having a tough day today. And I went out and I just like, climbed this, I was hiking and I climbed to the top of the hill and I just screamed at the top of my lungs, eat fucking faces, and like blah, blah. And it's like, that's super cool. And like a story like that. But the whole end of the day, the beginning of the day is like, get out of the victim mentality. Like no one's going to do this for you. You had to do it. Like nobody came along and said, Kevin, I'm going to make you successful and help you get this company out of bankruptcy. And like nobody came along and
no,
you went out and you sought the help. You went out and you found the resources and you found the training and stuff like that, but nobody came along and was like really hoping that you're successful.
No, and I think when you get to a point where I'm at, people are waiting for you to fail.
Yeah,
that's another driver.
Yeah,
okay? They want you to fail because they're not where you are, so they're looking at you and you've heard the stories where people become successful and they have to leave their friends behind. I've tried not to do that. I still have some of the same friends from high school, but people change. Not my friends so much because they're all pretty successful.
Yeah.
We've all kind of grew up together, similar stories, but it's tough.
Well, it's so cool. Like Shane, for example, and I didn't realize until after, that's probably after I even had to the podcast with Shane, that you guys had known each other since young. Like I saw a picture of you two, like probably as teenagers. I was like, holy shit.
Yeah, like 84, 85.
That's really cool. You talk about, like how that statement is so true that you got to leave your friends behind, but it's because you're not growing together. You're not doing the same. You're not having the same level of growth. In fact, sometimes you're growing the opposite directions, and that's why you run into a friend from high school and it's like, you don't have anything to talk about because you're so different. Well, it's so cool to have that.
In my personality, I just have no room for bullshit.
Yeah.
I just hate bullshit. I just tell you the way it is. And a lot of people have a hard time with that.
Yep.
A lot of people don't. I mean, a lot of my customers love me because I can call them up and tell them, and this is what we need to do. And they're like, okay.
Yep.
Like, I'm confident when I'm selling, but I just, as you get older, you don't want to hear the bullshit. I don't even want to hear Lincoln's bullshit. Like, he didn't get up for school today. I call him, I go, when you get home, you're cleaning your mom's Yukon out, you're doing this, you're doing that. And he's just like, okay. I'm like, you're going to get the fuck up for school. You're in your last year.
Oh, man, yeah.
He's like, Dad, I'm all straight A's. They waste my time. He is. They sent a thing. He's on the honor roll. They want to give him an award. He's like, I don't want an award. I don't want to go there anymore. I'm like, that's what you have to finish. But he's like, they waste my time.
Yeah.
He's like, I could be doing this and making this. I'm like, you got all the time in the world to make the money.
All the time.
But he just hates high school.
Yeah.
He says it's a waste of time. I can't argue with him because I think curriculum now is an absolute waste. Like, they're not teaching you checkbooks, finances, checking accounts. Like, we had checkbooks. We got bills in our mailbox every Friday. We had to get our paycheck and write the checks out and balance the check.
That's awesome.
Just swipe your credit card till it says declined. Well, thanks for coming on again. This was awesome. Hope to have you on in the future.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Take care.